catch it.
The preceding message was furnished by Major League Baseball.
You're in the big leagues now. Royals baseball. Something special in the air.
Ladies and gentlemen, we direct your attention to the pitcher's mound for tonight's ceremonial first pitch, which will be thrown by a member of the Royals family, the Royals co-owner, Avron Fogelman. Mr. Fogelman, fire away when you're ready, sir. Thank you, Mr. Fogelman. And now let's play ball.
Very quickly, Commissioner Peter Ubroth, Richie Phillips, counsel of the Umpires Union, said earlier he thinks your duty to step into this thing. You're a stand-up guy. Are you going to? I'm talking about the strike.
I'm going to back up the two presidents of the leagues. They're doing their best, and they're doing a good job. The umpires are well represented by Richie. Both presidents, Shub Feeney and Dr. Brown, I've been working for 3 months. I'm not going to come in and push people aside at my second day on the job. The issue is a very clear issue. Evidently, they want pay for the umpires who are not working the postseason. Well, okay, that's an issue. Should they be paid? I think the umpires, I hope they get back out there because they make this game. But there's a work ethic in this country, and if you don't work, you shouldn't be paid.
All right, just as quickly, at what point would you intercede?
I don't know, Howard. It's certainly not the second day, maybe farther on. Baseball is an important part of the fabric of the society, and these are going to be a great series, championships and then World Series, and we'd like to have those umpires back out there.
Directly, would you ever seek to break the union the way the air traffic controllers were broken?
No, I put on the Olympic Games by working with labor. We had them throughout every single part. Everything was labor, and they cooperated with us. They made us successful, and so my hat's off to them. No, I would never do that.
Thank you very much, Peter. Again, congratulations on the miracle of Los Angeles. Good luck.
My pleasure. Take care.
Now, quickly to Al Michaels.
All right, Howard, everybody knows that the Cubs won today, and there are the totals. Chicago routs San Diego 13-0 at Wrigley Field. Gary Matthews hitting 2 of the Cubs' 5 home runs. Steve Balboni, as we look at the Royals defensively, came over in a deal with the Yankees, and it turned out to be a very good one for Kansas City. Frank White, who knows what it's like to play in the playoffs and World Series, at second base. Then Onyx Concepcion had a very good second half of the season, coming back from a broken hand at shortstop. And George Brett had an off year at the plate, but George Brett is particularly dangerous in postseason situations. Darryl Motley is in left field. He's completing his first full season in the majors. Willie Wilson started the year in prison. He was suspended. He was reinstated on the 16th of May, and here he is in the playoffs in center field. And Pat Sheridan, who is from the Detroit area, is in right. Back of the plate is Don Slaught, who platooned with John Watson last year and then took over as the everyday catcher in 1984. And the pitcher is Bud Black. Kansas City, with their championship teams, you go back and think about people like Dennis Leonard, Paul Splittorff, Larry Gura. Last year, Vida Blue was part of the rotation, and there are the umpires. But none of those fellas figure right now. The umpires, you saw the umpires who would have worked instead tonight. Bill Deegan, and if that name sounds familiar, if you're a baseball fan, he worked in the American League for 10 years. He, Randy Crystal, Larry Zerbel, John Bible, Harold Jordan, and Mike Odell are the 6 umpires as we get set for game 1, and Lou Whitaker leads off by running up to bunt and missing for a strike. 0-1 the count. Whitaker to be followed by Trammell and Gibson here in the first inning. Brett playing in very shallow at third, and Bud Black ready to work with a count 0-1 as Whitaker pops it up in foul ground down the line. Concepcion and Brett are chasing it, but it lands in the first row and skips back into the seats. So the count 0-2. George Brett started the season on the disabled list, had arthroscopic knee surgery, injured himself the last day of spring training, did not come back until May 18th, and then missed several games down the stretch because of a torn hamstring. So he's just getting back to 100% right now. No balls, 2 strikes the count. on the American League's all-star second baseman, who takes low 1 and 2.
And of course, one of the reasons he's an all-star second baseman, great range, great hands, but he has the ability as a leadoff hitter. And we saw in Chicago, they were talking today about Bob Dernier. Lou Whitaker can make the work, can get on base and set the table.
Outside. When Whitaker first came up, he didn't have any power at all. In his first 4 years, he had a total of 12 home runs, but he began to muscle up, and he's hit 40 in the last 3, including 13 this year. And the 2-2 to him is taken high for ball 3. 3 and 2.
Well, Al, Lou Whitaker is a situation hitter as far as hitting the long ball. You get behind 3-1, 2-0. Especially in Detroit, which is a great hitting ballpark. Whether you're right-handed or left-handed, you'll get that pitch out over the plate and lose it.
Line drive, base hit into right center field. So it's Whitaker aboard, and up comes a man who might handle a bat as well as anybody in a hit-and-run situation in the American League. Alan Trammell.
Alan Trammell, shortstop.
Just a 3-2 fastball trying to throw a strike. You don't want to walk the leadoff batter. Whitaker just kind of pings it over White's head into right center for a base hit.
There was some question as to whether Alan Trammell could play defensively in the second half of the season. He went on the disabled list in July, was hurt his shoulder just prior to the All-Star game, and that cost him an appearance in San Francisco. But he was able to come back and play shortstop in August after spending 3 weeks as a designated hitter.
Since you brought it up, Al, he is, as you know, questionable in the throwing area. The advanced scouting report on him saying you hit it in the hole, he'll not be able to throw the runner out. He scoffs at that notion.
Throw to first base. Bud Black, by the way, when he first came up, was called for a lot of balks. And that brings up an interesting situation here with the umpires. The amateur umpires, will they call balks? Another throw to first base, or will they be less or more inclined, Jim, in your estimation?
I think they'd be less inclined. There are a lot of American League umpires that don't want the left-hander to have that advantage. You don't want it. I mean, the whole rule is to deceive the runner.
Black has one of the best pickoff moves in the league. Picked
well,
off 11 men.
Exactly. And what he is doing is not only keeping the runner close, but if you get off too far, he's going to pick you off. But he's refined that work. Paul Splitoff worked with him, Larry Gura, and he doesn't do what we call a balk move.
You mentioned Larry Gura. Nobody better qualified than you to note that Bud Black is an uppercase Larry Gura. Uppercase in the sense that he pitches with the same style, changes his speeds, and so on. Very crafty, but has more pop on his fastball than Larry. That's what I mean by uppercase.
He's got about 8 miles per hour.
That's right.
More pop.
If he also looks familiar to some National League fans, just look at his mechanics and his style on the mound. He's a little smaller than Steve, but he in a way reminds you of Steve Carlton. Up high, 1-2 the count. And on the subject of balk moves, Mr. Carlton has a good one himself.
Well, I pitched against Steve when I broke in 1964 in Aberdeen, South Dakota. He played for the Winnipeg team up in Canada, and he had a great balk move then. He was called for balks, what, 20 years ago. Black has an excellent move.
High, 2 balls, 2 strikes the count.
Aberdeen, South Dakota.
Oh, what a lovely summer I had.
You've come a long way, baby.
I never dreamed I'd be in the same booth with you, Howard.
2-2 to Trammell. Hit to deep left field. Motley going all the way back, and it's up against the fence and rolling back on the tartan turf. Whitaker comes in to score. Trammell's going for third. The throw is offline, and the Tigers lead 1-0. Alan Trammell hitting it over the head of Darryl Motley, directly over his head, and winds up with a triple. And Detroit has a man at third with nobody out and a 1-0 lead.
Right field.
What a pair to open for you,
There you see the ball going over. Tough play if he gets back. Of course, Trammell does have good power, but you're not expecting him to hit the ball off the wall off a guy like Black, who we said in the opening has been pitching extremely well. But what has happened, he ran the count to 3-2 in Whitaker and had to come in. 2 balls, 2 strikes on Trammell, and threw him a good pitch right in the middle of the plate.
Here is Gibson now, and the infield, with the exception of Brett, is playing back. So they'll give up a run on a ground ball with Detroit on top 1-0. And Kirk Gibson coming into his own this season.
Certainly is. When he got the break so that Sparky stopped platooning him because his alter ego was injured. He began to hit southpaws with reasonable authority. Earlier, he had been platooned against.
Last year, Gibson hit only 150 against left-handed pitching, but going back to the strike season, he destroyed them in 81, hitting 366. So he used to be able to hit them, and then he stopped hitting them, and then this year Anderson left him in every day after a while. And Gibson has played in more games than any other Tiger, and for the first time in his major league career, he has been relatively free of injury. 2-2.
There you saw that little slider that Black has. He got behind Gibson. The first two hitters, he threw him fastballs, a single and a triple. There he came back with a slider. Gibson took it for strike 2. Something he's going to have to do to be effective.
He drops down, and Gibson on a soft hand swing hits it to Brett at third, and Trammell has to hold. So Kirk gets fooled as Bud Black dropped down to get him. A big out. One away.
Batting fourth.
Just a little slider. Gibson, not a very good swing. Hit right to Brett. Easy play.
One down, and Lance Parrish is the batter. His average low, but as you can tell, 33 home runs. That's a career high, coming off last year when he had 32, and 98 runs batted in. The infield is up on the right side. Concepcion is back. As we pan left, Onyx will give up a run on the grounder to him, and Brett is just back of the bag at third. Outfield plays him to pull. Parrish hits it high in the air to deep right center, certainly deep enough to score a run. Sheridan races over and makes a great catch. It'll be a sacrifice fly to make it 2-0. Great play by Pat Sheridan, who went a long way to haul in the drive by Parrish. That's a home run in a lot of ballparks.
It sure is. This is a vast ballpark. I think it's the prettiest ballpark in the league.
Left field.
Sheridan going about as far as he can go, as you said, without having to look up over the fence, something we saw in Chicago all day. Fine running catch. Not afraid of the wall.
But Parrish doing his job. Although the batting average fell terribly this year into the 230s. He had the 33 home runs, better than 90 runs batted in, but still the big man. Herndon fell in the home run and RBI department this year, but Sparky believes in him, has never wavered in playing.
1 ball, 1 strike on Herndon, who came over to Detroit from the Giants 3 years ago, hit 43 home runs in his first 2 seasons, and just 7 this year.
That's one of the interesting things about the Tigers' outstanding start. They basically did it without Larry Herndon. The guy, as you said, has been really a dominant hitter for him. Can steal some bases for you, can hit for the average, as he hit over 300 last year, over 20 home runs.
And he terrorized left-handers this year, hitting .317 against lefties, .233 against righties. What it's amounted to of late is that Rupert Jones is platooning with Herndon.
Well, he's a story in and of himself. We'll get to him later.
Probably tomorrow night, in fact, when the right-hander goes for Kansas City. 2 out, and the 1-2 pitch is low and inside, and the count is 2-2.
One thing about there he is. That's the man. He's worked a miracle. Came into the stadium, lost 5 straight, blown out, fell to 11 below 500, never wavered, never lost faith, and here he is.
2-2 to Herndon, fouled away. Detroit in postseason play for the first time in 12 years. The last time the Tigers were in the league championship series, in fact, the only time since the leagues went to this format, was 1972 when they lost to Oakland in 5. For Kansas City, though, it's become a regular occurrence. The Royals in the playoffs for the 5th time in 9 years. Ball, strike 3 to Herndon.
No indecision on Bill Deegan. Did you see that, Jim? Unlike the opening inning today.
Well, just a high slider. Herndon doesn't think it's a strike. But when you have that outside protector, as we see with Bill Deegan, you get that high strike. Strike 3.
After a half, it's Detroit 2, and the Royals coming up. Tigers, a very loose group coming in on top 2-0. Yesterday, Howard asked Sparky Anderson if the Tigers were maybe a little bit overconfident coming into the playoffs.
No, because my kids have never been to this, all but about 3 of them. They've never been to a World Series. They're awed by the whole thing. They love it. I think they're going to play well, Howard, but I don't believe they're thinking about the records between the two. I think they're thinking that Kansas City's an object that they must remove. And knowing Gibson, he'd do anything to remove him. He might run right over somebody, but it's an object there that gets them to the greatest thrill that they'll ever have in their lifetime. I think that they're going to play hard and respect Kansas City, but play extremely well.
Sparky Anderson has managed Detroit since '79, and he sends defensively Darrell Evans to first base. Free agent came over from the Giants. Lou Whitaker at second. He has been teaming up with Alan Trammell from their minor league days back in the mid-'70s. Trammell at shortstop, and at third base, a bit of a surprise, Marty Castillo has started only 14 games at third this season. We'll get into that situation as we move along. Larry Herndon is in left. In center field, a man who gets as good a jump as any center fielder in baseball on a fly ball. That's Chet Lemon, all-star center fielder for the American League. And Kirk Gibson, who many Tigers feel might be this team's MVP, is in right. Back of the plate is Lance Parrish. Sparky was able to rest him from time to time and keep him in the lineup as well this year by inserting him as a DH. And Jack Morris is the pitcher. If they had voted for the Cy Young Award through about the second week of June, Morris would have been a lock. He got off to that kind of start. He wound up with 19 wins and 11 losses. In his second start of the season, Morris pitched a no-hitter. It was one of 2 in the American League this season. He pitched it against Chicago, the other being the perfect game pitched by Mike Witt on an inopportune day for Witt. If you're going to pitch a perfect game, don't do it in a meaningless game on a Sunday, the final day of the year, and have football bury you in the sports section.
Do it against Kansas City when it counts.
Our congratulations to Mike Witt, only
exactly.
the 13th
Don't take
perfect
it away
game
from
ever.
him. This has to be one of the most remarkable stories in contemporary baseball. No question about it.
Willie Wilson, and it really parallels, Howard, this entire story in terms of the franchise here. The fact they felt they had to undergo a transition type of season after the drug scandal. The Royals appear to be on their way to rock bottom last winter. And instead, here they are in the playoffs as Wilson takes a strike.
Just a matter of some of their young players maturing. But I think it's something you have to note that they really did not start playing well till Brett came back and Willie Wilson.
Without Wilson, while he was suspended, the Royals were 12-20, to give you some idea as to what he means. They were 8 under and wound up 6 over with an 84-78 final mark.
Well, when he gets on, he just changes the whole complexion of the game for a pitcher.
Crawford is short. Trammell has to hurry his throw, and he's on target for the out. One away.
It wasn't into the hole, but it was still evidence of the retention of the quick release.
Number 15.
Well, here you just see a high chopper on AstroTurf with Willie Wilson running. You know, if you're Alan Trammell, you got to hurry. And you just see the snap throw. He's always had the most accurate arm I've ever seen a shortstop have. And there's a perfect example of it.
Including Belanger?
Including Belanger. Mark Belanger may have had more range and better hands, but I haven't seen a shortstop that could throw with Alan Trammell.
26-year-old Pat Sheridan, who made that nice play in the first inning, looks at a strike on the inside corner. Sheridan has just spent his first full season in the majors, as has Motley in left. We talked about the young pitchers. It was the first year for Don Slaught as an everyday catcher. Hauser has really done a job here. Morris bouncing it to the backstop, and the count is 1-1. Dick Hauser, what he's looking for tonight is his first ever postseason victory. He managed the Yankees in 1980 and got swept by the Royals in 3. And then in the late unlamented divisional playoffs, which were put in place because of the strike in '81, he lost the divisional playoffs to Oakland in 3. 1-2 the count. Jack Morris, as durable and as consistent really as any pitcher in the American League now for the last 5 years. Strike Sheridan out, and there are 2 down here in the bottom of the first inning.
96-mile-per-hour range. That's a power pitcher.
Well, it certainly is, Howard. That's on the Jugs gun, which is a little bit faster than some of the other conservative guns they use. But when you're throwing 96 miles per hour and you're George Brett or you're Pat Sheridan, you better get the bat going. And that makes that breaking ball. And Morris has got an excellent slider, and he's got that split-fingered fastball, so you just can't sit on one pitch.
Batter is George Brett, who for the first time since 1978 hit under 300. 0-1 the count. Brett again starting the year on the disabled list. George has been hurt a lot. If you go back over his record through the past few years, even though his average has always been high, and you think about that incredible year in 1980, he has not been particularly durable in the sense that he spends a lot of time on the disabled list and misses several games for injuries.
That's true. Even now, as you can see, he's hit Morris very well throughout his career. Even now, he's fighting a hamstring problem.
He tore it.
Rested the past few days, and he says he'll be agile tonight. We'll see. What a hitter there.
Yep. 2-1 the count.
Picture perfect.
It's not a bad off year when you hit 284 and you miss about 2 months and you still hit 13 home runs and drive in 69.
Well, something to note about George Brett, as a guy that pitched against him for years and did not have a whole lot of success, when he expands the strike zone, in other words, swings at bad pitches, he's not a particularly tough out. But when he makes you throw strikes, get the ball in the strike zone, that's when George is the type of guy that's going to hit 390 like he did back in 1980.
What can you tell about, on that subject, what can you tell about Deegan so far? How big is his strike zone?
Well, I've always felt Bill Deegan was a pitcher's umpire. When I pitched, he was the type of guy that, and you can see the outside protector. Most of the American League umpires have gone with the inside one. He gives you the high strike. When you get the high strike and you have a rising fastball like like Morris, you want to take advantage of that. But he did miss. He threw an excellent split-fingered fastball, which Morris thought was a strike, and he didn't give him a low strike. So I think the one thing that I noticed in today's game in Chicago, if you're a hitter or a pitcher, all you want from an umpire is consistency, and that was not.
It was erratic.
Very erratic.
Erratic strike zone.
Right from the first pitch of the game, you could tell. That's called strike 3, and Brett will put up no argument. That was right there. He got fooled by the speed of it as Morris took a little something off it. In super slow motion from back of the plate, watching the rotation of the ball.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 1984 American League
And George Brett watches it go by. No doubt about that call. Professional or amateur umpires or any umps. That's strike 3. We go to the second. Detroit 2, Kansas City nothing. Royal Stadium, Kansas City. Here's what Dick Hauser had to say about the man on the mound for the Royals tonight, Bud Black.
Number 27.
I've liked Blackie since we got him. Bud Black came over here from Seattle, and I liked him. We brought him aboard. He was kind of a relief pitcher starter. He came a long way last year. We decided in spring training this year that we'd make Bud Black the #1 pitcher on this staff because of the way he pitched last year. He'd earned it last year. He showed that he can be a #1 pitcher on any staff in baseball.
And he is the ace of the staff right now, Bud Black, who would also pitch a 5th game the way Hauser has this rotation set up. Hauser's going to go with, at the moment anyway, 4 different pitchers, while Anderson will just use his big 3 of Morris, Petrie, and Wilcox. Barbaro Garbe is the batter, and the 2-0 pitch is lifted in the air to left field, and an easy play for Darryl Motley. 1 away here in the second inning, and the batter will be Chet Lemon.
Interesting thing about the pitching matchup tonight, though Black did have a shaky first inning. First half of the season, clearly the best pitcher in the league was Jack Morris. Second half of the season, the best pitcher in the league was Bud Black. Just inverted. But in Morris's last 3 starts, he pitched as well as he ever had, according to Lance Parrish.
Chet Lemon had a fine year, half swing, and it's in there anyway for a strike. Chet starting the All-Star game in San Francisco, 3rd year with Detroit. Steve Kemp was looking for a way out 3 years ago, you'll recall, so they wound up dealing him to Chicago for Lemon. 0-2 the count.
How do you like that?
He's battered in black and blue. 8 for 15.
Black and blue?
I didn't say that.
No, I hope not. The reason for that, of course, is Lemon has hit left-handers so far superior than right-handers. Dives into the ball.
But that time he ran in on him, and down goes Chet Lemon. Strikeout number 2 for Bud Black.
Remember how every year Earl Weaver, as we look at this again, Black, by the way, his clock top speed 91, as against Morris, who gets up to the 98 point. But remember how Earl Weaver every year thought he was going to steal Chet Lemon away?
Well, I think Earl's always been a great judge of talent. And once Paul Blair left, it didn't take a whole lot of judge of talent to see that Chet Lemon was the type of guy you'd like to have every day out in center field.
Darrell Evans takes inside. He was the most sought-after free agent last year after playing out his option with San Francisco. Drafted by 18 clubs. And he picked Detroit and takes a strike on the inside corner. Evans is playing first base tonight. He'll play third base against left-handed or against right-handed pitching. So you'll see him moving around the infield during the series, and the Tigers have also used him as a DH off times this year.
Really kind of had the year that he normally has. If you look at his career, he's averaged somewhere around 15, 16 home runs, and 16 home runs is not a bad year.
To left field, and DeMotley makes the catch to retire the side. So Bud Black got off to a shaky start, is on his way to settling down, and we'll go to the bottom of the second with the Tigers in Game 1 leading the Royals 2-0 in Kansas City. Jack Morris missed a couple of starts in mid-year with a tender elbow, and discussed that situation with Howard Cosell yesterday.
Well, I did. I had a little tendonitis in my right elbow. It's kind of like a tennis elbow, I guess, what they call it. But that's all gone right now, and my last 3 starts is as well as I've pitched my last over the course of the whole second half. So I really feel positive going into the next inning.
Jack Morris, who set the side down in order, goes to work on Kansas City in the bottom of the second inning. Just to set the schedule for this series for you, it's a best of 5, first to win 3. Tonight and tomorrow here in Kansas City. Day off on Thursday, and then to Detroit. Game 3 Friday. Game 4, if necessary, on Saturday, and then a 5th and deciding game, if necessary, would be played on Sunday at Tiger Stadium. George Orta looks at his strike as we start the bottom of the second. He'll be followed by Motley and Balboni.
How'd you pitch this guy, Jim? When he first came up, I thought he had potential to lead the league in batting. He's a good,
well, he's an
solid
excellent hitter. Very short swing, as you can see.
To left field and deep, but it's a big ballpark as Herndon circles and makes the catch.
Howard, if you're going to try to pitch Orta consistently, what you would like to do is pitch him up and in.
Al Kaline, one of the most significant people in this whole city. I don't mean just on a baseball basis. I mean off the playing field. And his relationship with Kirk Gibson is a matter of documented history. He has made Kirk into the ball player he's already become.
Hall of Famer Al Kaline, now a Tiger broadcaster, and also as
out of a Baltimore high school.
Yep, he worked.
Got his 3,000 hit in Baltimore off Dave McNally.
Working with Gibson mentally as well as physically this spring.
Off McNally, huh?
Off Dave McNally. Late in September. Of course, Gibson said when he said, if you can't learn from a guy like Kaline, who are you going to learn from? Pretty good teacher.
Darryl Motley with the count 1-0 hits a fly ball to shallow right field. And it's Gibson there to make the catch, and Jack Morris has begun things by retiring the first 5. And Steve Balboni coming up. A reminder, Game 2 of the National League Championship Series. Cubs winning today 13-0 since Steve Trout to the mound against Mark Thurman at 2 Eastern time. And we are here tomorrow night, prime time, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 5 on the coast. Dan Petrie, an 18-game winner for Detroit, against 20-year-old Brett Saberhagen for the Royals, pitching in high school 2 years ago. Steve Balboni was a minor league terror in the Yankee system. They brought him up a couple of times, never really stuck with him or gave him a chance. 5 consecutive years he won a minor league home run title. The Royals traded for him, said first base is yours, my friend, and he's had a pretty good year. Grounded toward the hole. Let's look at Trammell's arm. It's a little weak, but he's lucky he had Balboni running.
You're right about that.
3 up and 3 down. To the third we go. It's Detroit 2 and Kansas City 0. Jim Campbell, the president of the Detroit Tigers, Been with that team for a long time. And finally, this year, everything coming together for the first time in 12 years for the Tigers, who certainly last year showed signs of at least contending this year. There was little doubt about that. They did finish second to Baltimore in 1983. This year, a club record 104 wins as Castillo leads off in the third inning, taking outside, ball 1. 1-0 the count.
And don't forget the owner, smart enough to stay out of the baseball people's way, Tom Monahan.
Ground ball foul, 1-1.
Remarkable man. Lovely piece on Peter Jennings' World News Tonight on Tom, king of Domino Pizza, who is such an important part of the Detroit community. That's the great thing about what this Detroit team has meant to that community in the inner city renaissance.
1-1 pitch is taken low. Not a bad year to decide to buy the club. Rookie owner. Of course,
spent a lot for it.
They're undergoing a transition here in Kansas City as well, where Ewing Kaufman has owned the team for many years, and Avron Fogelman came in. Black turned it over in the count, 2 balls and 2 strikes. Another look here from ground level.
Excellent changeup that goes away from right-handed hitters. And what Black's been able to do since the first 2 hitters, and there we see that not overpowering fastball, but just below 90 miles per hour for strike 3. But Al, what he's been able to do, he got a couple of pitches out over the plate to both Whitaker and Trammell. He's pitching inside, and he's using that screwball to go away. And here you see that looked like a cut fastball, just ran it in on Castillo, had no chance.
Well, after a little shakiness at the outset, Whitaker a single, and then Trammell a triple, and nice running catch by Sheridan on a sacrifice fly. Black appears to have things very much in sync as he goes through the order for the second time. It's ball 1 to Whitaker, 1-0.
Well, what that catch by Sheridan did was really keep them out of the big inning situation, not only physically but mentally put your team out of the game.
They got Black for a different Castillo.
Yep.
From Seattle.
Manny
Castillo.
Well, you know, we keep joking about the player to be named later. Well, Bud Black was the player to be named later in 1981. Manny Castillo going to the Seattle Mariners. And Black, the player to be named later, going to Kansas City as Whitaker grounds it down to Balboni. He'll shovel to Black, covering just in time. Turned it into a close play. Whitaker can run. 2 away. That's 8 in a row. Retired now by Bud Black.
Well, those routine plays you practice every day in spring training. Black getting over there as quick as he can. He took the direct route to first base, was what you want to do. And as you said, you can see Whitaker can get down the baseline. He made that play pretty close.
Alan Trammell tripled in the first inning. Closed stance. He went to that closed stance in August, I guess it was in 1983. Gates Brown and Trammell worked on it. The first night he used it, he went 5 for 5, and he was sold at that point.
You know how he got to that closed stance? Now, when he first came up, remember, he was a dead right field, right center field hitter. Then Gates started to work with him, and he began to pull to left, and he had lost the ability to hit the right. Combining the two, now as he does, he pulled for the triple, you'll remember, in the first inning, and yet you'll see him frequently go to right field. It comes out of the stance that he's developed with Gates Brown.
3 balls, no strikes the count. In there for a strike. You know, in every baseball season, there's always somebody who gets off to that incredibly hot start, makes magazine covers. This year it was Trammell. Then always somebody who sort of emerges in mid-season. And that was Ryne Sandberg this year over in the National League as Trammell takes ball 4.
Because of the way the afternoon game started, with a few notable errors by the amateur umpires, Jim, I'd like you to develop for us your view of what Deegan is doing, because there is obvious evidence of the experience and the assuredness within him.
Well, what Bill Deegan has done is he's established a consistent strike zone. It's a little bit higher than I think the hitters would like, but he hasn't been calling a low pitch. So they know, and all you have to do is look at that outside protector. If you're a hitter, and if you have any kind of smarts at all, you know that he's apt not to call the low strike, but you're probably going to have to start swinging at some of those high pitches. Now, if you're Jack Morris, that doesn't hurt you because you throw 95, 98 miles per hour. If you're Bud Black, it takes away that low strike, and for Black to be effective, he needs to get that low strike.
No balls, 1 strike the count. As Gibson grounds it toward the middle and off the glove of Frank White and out into center field. The throw will come into second as Trammell scoots to third. And runners are at first and third now with 2 down, and Lance Parrish, who drove in a run with a sacrifice fly in the first inning, is coming up. Just off the glove of Frank White. It's a play he's made many times in his career.
Well, one of the best second basemen, and there you see him just diving to his right off the end of his glove, as you said. One of those AstroTurf hits.
That's exactly it.
I would venture to say with the high grass in Detroit,
That's an easy out.
most likely so.
Tigers on top. 2-0 as Lance Parrish comes up. 98 runs batted in for Parrish during the regular season. 2 on and 2 out. Low for a ball. 1-0 the count.
I mean, is Parrish the type of guy that if you wanted to go somewhere and you needed a bodyguard, I mean, would you ask him to, you know, just string along? I mean, the perfect size.
Yeah, you consider it. Might have Brian Downing in there with me. The 2 of them both lifting weights. Remember when Parrish started to lift weights a couple of winters ago, and he showed up and Sparky Anderson couldn't believe it. Went wild. Thought I was wrong, but Parrish convinced him by having a good spring and a good regular season. It was right.
Oh, the way this man has worked to become what he now may be, the best defensive catcher in the game. The work that Bill Freehan, the former great Detroit catcher, has done with him now in the broadcast booth, Bill.
Well, Howard, you recall the All-Star game we did in Montreal in 1982. Parrish, the only man in All-Star history to throw out 3 would-be base stealers.
Just a little breaking ball behind in the count, 2-0. If you throw him a fastball, good chance of having a home run swing.
I
Came back
recall
with
it,
that breaking
Alfalfa. I didn't know you did.
Absolutely. I'll even tell you the count if you want. 2 balls and a strike. Parrish hits a high fly ball to deep center field. Fortunately for Wilson, there is some room, and he makes the catch. Lance Parrish in a lot of ballparks would have 2 home runs tonight. Instead, we've still got a ball game. It's 2-0 Tigers at the end of 2 1/2. Frank White to lead off in a short series of best of 5. White talks about the significance of the first game.
But I'm hoping we can at least split here going into Detroit. But Morris and Petrie have always been tough. We're throwing a tough pitch in Bud Black. And the first game, I think, will be the key to the whole series.
Really?
Because if we can beat Morris, we beat Petrie once this year. Morris is a guy we haven't beat. And if we can get Morris the first game, I think that we realize what we did with Petrie early in the year. Knowing that he's a good pitcher, I think that'll give us the confidence for him, too.
For what it's worth, in the 15-year history of the playoffs, that's 30 playoff series, both leagues, the team that has won the first game has gone on to win 21 of them. That's 70%. And if a team goes down 0-2, only one team in 30 series has overcome that disadvantage, that being the Milwaukee Brewers in '82 against California. Tigers 2, Royals nothing. Al Michaels with Howard Cosell and Jim Palmer in Kansas City. Morris missing outside. Morris has retired the first 6.
But in terms of storyline, Jim, when you give Morris even a 2-run lead, which is what he has now, it becomes sort of a 7-inning game, doesn't it?
Well, it
With
sure
Hernandez?
does. I had some relief pitchers when I pitched, but never anybody like Willie Hernandez that in 33 save situations, and there we see a comebacker right to the mound.
And
Morris easily
takes care of him.
But what happens is that you go 7 innings and you don't have any big innings, you keep them in the game, you hold them to 1 run, the game's just about over. Now, of course, the same thing applies if you're a Kansas City pitcher. What Bud Black wants to do is hold him at 2 runs, hope he gets 3, and get to Quisenberry. But I think this is going to prevail through the entire series.
Also, both teams have pretty good men to set up Hernandez and Quisenberry. The Royals have Joe Beckwith, who has filled that role very admirably. And the Tigers have Aurelio Lopez. The batter is Don Slaught. 1-0. Don Slaught went to UCLA. Fine baseball player for the Bruins. And the man right next to him right now in the crowd, Lance Parrish, had a chance to go to UCLA on a football scholarship, but wound up signing with the Tigers instead. Line drive, base hit into center field. First hit and first base runner for the Royals. And so Slaught is on with one down, and it will bring up Onyx Concepcion. A pair of college football games for you as Nebraska tries to rebound after the upset at the hands of Syracuse against surprising Oklahoma State. Georgia takes on Alabama. College football on ABC this Saturday at 3:30 Eastern Time.
Lost to Syracuse was amazing.
Yeah. Concepcion takes a strike. He is no relation to David of the Reds. Broke his hand earlier this season. You know, one of the things that the Royals have been helped by measurably, especially down the stretch, is the production out of the bottom of the order. White and Slaught and Concepcion all had good Septembers.
Slaught will fool you. He hit Finland 300 last year, but he was a catcher last year that they didn't want to pitch to, some of those Royals pitchers. You know that, Jim.
Well, he certainly changed, Howard. You go talk to any of the, you go talk to the pitching coach, or you go talk to some of the pitchers, they like throwing to Don Slaught. I think a lot of it has to do with that John Waffen was here for years.
That's
right. He's kind of a tradition here. A very nice guy.
Look at what Concepcion has hit since the All-Star break. That's unbelievable.
Well, he came all the way from 220 to 280. As you said, he broke his hand in the midst of that streak, but came back just as hot.
In the air to right center field. And it's Lemon calling for it to make the catch. The league championship series is now official as we have had our first wave rolling around and still rolling around Royal Stadium in Kansas City. And with two down, it brings up Willie Wilson. That's a sight that has now become familiar everywhere. I'm waiting for it at the Opera House.
I didn't know you were an opera buff.
I'm not. I'm just waiting for it.
Outside, right?
Right. Willie Wilson slaps it into left field for a base hit. Don Slaught will stop at second, and so the Royals, who are down 2-0, have runners at first and second. Two down in the third inning, and Pat Sheridan coming up.
Didn't you like the way Wilson just snapped back?
Well, if you can run like Willie can, you would try to just make contact. Fastball away, just goes the other way. He's not a particularly strong hitter. Most of his home runs are the inside the park variety. And in this ballpark, as Charlie Lau espoused while he was alive, hit the ball where it's pitched.
So it's 2-0. The Tigers on top, but with two down, runners at first and second. Pat Sheridan struck out in the first inning. And Morris is ahead 0-1. Dunn got Morris that time at 97 miles per hour.
Now, I think this is one of the interesting parts of pitching and baseball and whole. We saw the first time he just went right by Sheridan with high fastballs. Let's see if Sheridan adjusts, either by taking them.
No.
There we saw that split finger fastball. When you're throwing 97 mile per hour and the hitter knows that he struck out the last time on a high fastball, and then you come back with a pitch like that, I would have to say Sheridan's in trouble.
Well, he owned Sheridan in his first at-bat, and he's owned him on the first two pitches here. And this is low for ball one, 1-2. Morris, very tough in these situations. Slaught is at second. Wilson is at first. That's the best time if you're on the field and look at Willie Wilson with a man ahead of him on base. Foul back, still 1-2.
I go back to the 1966 World Series when we went to play the Dodgers in Los Angeles, and Dave McNally, a couple of singles of bases loaded walk, and Jim Murray wrote the next day, Dave McNally stopped the Dodgers running attack by loading the bases. You're right. You don't want Willie Wilson to get on first with an open base in front of him. It's just like throwing a double.
And Sheridan slaps it down the left field line. It is curling, foul ball.
But these are pesty hitters. They're slap hitters.
Well, if you look at the Kansas City lineup, and there we say the ball just curving barely foul. And you said, I think, best, Howard, before the game when you said this is a game of luck. Not a whole lot of difference between a ball that's just barely foul and a double, possibly a triple, the way the ball bounces around in the corner here.
But Mr. Rickey said luck is the residue of design. Not a bad phrase.
I think I'll use that if I ever manage.
Earl's managing every team in baseball.
1-2 pitch. 2-2 the count. A lot of jobs for Earl to have right now.
He can handle them all. Can't he?
I'm taking the fifth.
2-2 the count. Ball 3. So now the runners will be going. Slot from second, and Wilson will be taking off from first.
From an 0-2 count, look at he was in deep trouble. Look at the way he's hung in there.
Well, he hasn't chased those high pitches. I think considering that the umpires are on strike and that Earl had such a great ability to be an umpire, he ought to volunteer.
3-2 pitch is fouled away. Came in with a fastball, and so the runners go back. Slot to second. Wilson to first.
I mean, let's face it, Earl umpired from the dugout for 14 years. Why couldn't he do it from the broadcasting booth?
Let him up.
Let him up.
Equal time tomorrow for Weaver. 2 o'clock Eastern time. Three and 2 the count. And Sheridan fouling it away again. So Slot at second and Wilson at first. Bill Deegan back of the plate, calling the balls and strikes. By the way, talking to Dick Butler, the American League supervisor of umpires, they will not necessarily rotate if the strike is still on. Butler left open the possibility of Deegan again being back at the plate tomorrow.
I asked him, can you go 5 games?
3-2 to Sheridan is fouled away one more time. So he's making Morris throw a lot of pitches here in the third inning.
Good piece of hitting, Al. What happens as a pitcher, you get ahead 0-2, as Howard said. You try to get him to go for your pitch. Now at 3-2, you don't want to give him a good pitch to hit. But then again, you don't want to walk him either.
Not with Brett on deck.
Not exactly the thing that you will enamor yourself to Sparky Anderson if you're Jack Morris.
And the 3-2. Morris falls down on ball 4. Morris fell down as he delivered, and so they're loaded up for Brett.
Kind of hard to tell what kind of pitch he was trying to throw, but you can just see his left foot start to slide.
So they're loaded up now with Slot at third, Wilson at second, Sheridan at first. A lot of times when the pitcher falls down, the ball will go to the backstop, and with Morris on the ground, had that happened, Kansas City might have had a run, especially with the runners going. So in that sense, he was fortunate. Brett, 2 out, bases loaded. Ball 1. Pop foul and back out of play, and the count is 1 ball and 1 strike. George Brett in postseason play. No, you remember some of his accomplishments. 1970-80, he hit 3 homers in a game at Yankee Stadium. 1980, he hit a home run off Goose Gossage at Yankee Stadium. Turned out to be the key blow in the pennant-clinching game for the Royals. 1-2 the count.
Looks like another split finger fastball. Looks like the pattern he's trying to establish is throw enough fastballs to keep George honest and then get him out like he did when he struck him out the first inning with a split finger fastball.
You think George's having any trouble with his swing because of that hamstring?
Well, I talked to him yesterday and he said he felt fine. Whether that's the truth or not, George's the type of guy that's not going to.
He lines it to right field. Here comes Gibson, and he makes the catch. It looked like he had a beat on the ball, and it looked for a moment as if he was indecisive, but just very, very briefly, and then in to make the catch to retire the side.
Can't hit it any better than that. Reasonably similar situation earlier today. Those of you who watched the afternoon game know when Moreland made the good catch. Here, as we look at it again, wasn't as difficult as Moreland's catch, but he was where he had to be, and he backhanded it.
We played 3, and it's still 2-0 Tigers in game 1. To left field, and then Lance Parrish drove in Trammell on a play on which Pat Sheridan made a fine catch in deep right center. So the Tigers settled for 2 in the inning. The Royals threatened in the bottom of the 3rd, loading the bases, but Brett lining out to Gibson. And now we go to the 4th. Larry Herndon, Barbaro Garbey, and Chet Lemon for Detroit. Bud Black, completing his first full season. Last year he began the season at Omaha, AAA, but spent most of the year up here. To deep left field and hooking toward the corner and out of here. Larry Herndon, who did not hit a home run this season, and everybody was wondering why until the 21st of June. And then he didn't hit his second home run until the 7th of August. After hitting 43 over the preceding 2 seasons, has given Detroit a 3-0 lead.
Behind the hitter again, Herndon gets a fastball, most likely looking for it. Black just isn't that overpowering that he can get behind the hitters and lay that fastball in there. Scores 3-0. Very simple game. And it reminds me of the last game of '82.
Yeah. Barbaro Garbey, the batter, and the count is 1-0.
Get behind Yount, home run. Get behind Yount, home run. Get behind Cooper, home run.
1 ball, 1 strike the count. Very loose Tiger dugout. Team that spent every day of the season in first place. They began the year with 9 straight wins, reeled off another 9-game winning streak during that 35-5 start, and also a 7-game winning streak. Sparky Anderson was saying it got to the point where, you know, you're 35-5 and you just don't think you can lose.
What does a manager mean to a ball player? What can he do? The relationship between Anderson and Herndon is what's kept Herndon in there, what's made him the ball player he became until this year, and what will probably restore him next year to the form he displayed the prior 2 years. That's a man with a syntax reminiscent of the late Casey Stengel. Convoluted sentences, yet the way it all winds up has a cogency in a sense that amounts to baseball wisdom.
To deep center field, Willie Wilson going back, and he has room to make the catch here. Again, a long fly ball. Parrish has hit 2 that would have been out of several other parks, and Garbey hitting this one to deep center. So Black is struggling again. 4th inning with 1 out, and Lemon is the batter. Now, one thing about Sparky, Howard, he was given short shrift in Cincinnati. It's easy to say in retrospect. He had all of those guys who were going to the Hall of Fame. He wasn't a push-button manager. He was one of the best in the game, if not the best.
No question about it. One of the nice things about this series is the way the 2 managers respect one another, and it's not just talk.
Lemon fouling it away. Well, the golfer Tom Watson, native of Kansas City, home to root for the Royals.
I wonder if Tom Selleck's coming from Hawaii to root for Detroit.
Down the left field line and right into the glove of the ball boy. 0-2. Bud Black went to San Diego State. Originally up with the Mariners, pitched briefly with Seattle in 1981, and then, as we alluded to earlier, the player to be named later, coming over to Kansas City. 1 ball, 2 strikes.
Sure, a lot of good young left-handers. Mark Langston, Frank Viola, Bud Black here.
To center, and right there is Wilson. Willie is in his tracks for the out. 2 away. Darrell Evans is really a first-class, first-rate gentleman, I guess is the best way to describe him. If you enjoy seeing good things happen to nice people, you can be happy for Evans. A long career, and spent most of it not necessarily anonymously, but with clubs that really weren't in races very often. Atlanta in the early days, and then San Francisco, and finally getting his moment in the sun now.
Playing his former song.
That's right. I left my heart.
You know, the funny thing was in San Francisco, there was a big scoop. Bob Lurie was holding a press conference. They wrote it was to announce Jim Fregosi as the new manager. It was to announce that he was putting the club up for sale. That's tomorrow night's pitcher. This kid has beaten Detroit 3 times. Brett Saberhagen.
3-1 on the year.
Sparky says he fears most.
Well, he ought to. He's got great command of his pitches. He's got an excellent fastball. I think it was interesting what he said when he pitched against the Angels. I grew up in California. I've seen him play. I know how to get him out, so I did it.
Huh.
I wonder if he's watched the Tigers play. Obviously has. 3-1.
Evans getting sent back. You mentioned Darrell before, Jim. Low average as we look at it again. It's only 232 this year, but he walks a lot. He always has. He led the club in walks, and his on-base percentage is pretty good. 3-2.
Well, I think the big adjustment he had to make after being in the National Leagues all that year is a little bit bigger strike zone. He said he was not particularly disciplined early in the year, and he was taking a lot of pitches that may have been balls in the National League. They were strikes over here, and then he started chasing those pitches. But again, 16 home runs is not a bad year.
He rolls it on the carpet into right field for a base hit. Now there is your prototypical AstroTurf hit. They talk about it being a pool table. This is not AstroTurf, by the way. It's what they call tartan turf that was laid down here when the park opened in '73, and they're going to resurface during the offseason. But watch it. It never bounces. It just rolls like it's on a pool table. Right under Balbone's glove.
Let me tell you something. Balboni, a big man, and appears to some to be lumbering, is no slouch at first base, Jim. He's a pretty good defensive first baseman.
Marty Castillo takes a strike.
Of course, there is a little bit of difference between being a good first baseman and having great range. I'm not sure if Steve would exactly be an Eddie Murray or a type of guy like...
How many of those are there?
Not... Well, for the pitchers union, thank goodness not too many.
Despite the utterances of Whitey Herzog, Keith Hernandez.
Boy, is he outstanding. I had a chance to do a lot of Met games, and if you say anything, I think other than maybe Dwight Gooden, he really meant a lot to that ball club, helped the pitching staff, helped their defense, just helped the attitude in that ball club.
1 ball, 2 strikes to count on Castillo. 2 out. We're in the top of the 4th inning. Game 1 in Kansas City. Tigers on top 3-0. Evans at first base. Not a threat to go, even though Balboni holds him on here.
What Balboni can do, he's great on the ball in the dirt, which saves a lot of errors if you're a shortstop or a third baseman. Well, it's really basically what Steve Garvey does so well.
2 balls and 2 strikes to count.
Roof camera.
Two and 2 on Castillo. Sparky Anderson contending Howard Johnson will be his third baseman next year. Johnson doing a good part of the work at third this year, but he goes with Castillo against the lefty here. And as we mentioned, tomorrow night, Evans plays third against the righty Saberhagen.
There was a pitch that Deegan might have given him, you know. But you said earlier, he's given them a high strikes.
That's exactly right. That low curveball, no dice. So we're going to see a 3-2 pitch.
Evans is going, and it's fouled away. And Slot took that one off his shoulder.
One thing we should say about Sparky, Well, one of his greatest assets, and as you said, he is what we'd call a cheerleader. I remember in 1982, Howard Johnson came up. He said this guy's going to hit 300 in the big leagues for the next 10 years. Now, maybe he will if he ever gets a chance to play.
If you like publicity, Sparky's a wonderful guy to have on your side. I mean, Sparky can help you win an award. Make your name pretty well known as Castillo grounds it by Brett and out into left field for a base hit. And to the bottom of the order, put men at first and second with 2 down.
They've really belted Black this inning. The 2 outs were hard drives to center field.
Just a little changeup, but right in the middle of the plate.
Talking about Sparky publicizing a ball player, sometimes he doesn't and later is rueful about it as Blaylock comes out to have a talk with his pitcher.
Gary Blaylock, the pitching coach, and they will get busy in the bullpen. In the bullpen for Kansas City is Mark Huseman. Their long man. Again, the 2 key relievers would be Beckwith, who they like to go to about the 7th inning if they can, sometimes as early as the 6th, and then if they have the lead, they finish up with Quiz.
Basic problem here for the Royals is simple, as Jim stated earlier. You get 3 runs behind Morris, he gives you 7 innings, and then you got Hernandez and you're dead. That's what Frank White was talking about when he said the first game of this series is critical. If we can beat their ace, Morris, that's something. We know we can beat Petrie. Not saying he's not a good pitcher, but we've beaten him.
Whitaker gets backed off the plate, ball 1. So the Tigers on the verge of breaking this one open here.
Excuse me, I think another thing, of course, Frank White was thinking was, hey, Brett Saberhagen is 3-1 and Black's never beaten him. So if they win tonight, it's like a plus, something they really didn't expect. And I think if you look at all 4 playoff games, and there's a low and away strike again. Black not getting that pitch. Slot a little bit upset.
That's turning his game on him.
Well, again, he's 2-0, 2 balls, no strikes. Do you throw him the fastball that he singled on the first time, or do you come with a breaking ball and take a chance of maybe going ball 3?
Fastball, ground ball down to Frank White. And so Black escapes further damage here in the 4th inning. A leadoff homer by Herndon. 3 hits. They lead 2. We played 3.5. It's Detroit.
Going back to Jack Morris, they had him winning 30 games when he had that great start. Didn't even end up winning 20. But the one thing about Jack, you can use the cliche. I talked to Roger Craig. He said a lot of his problems is that he wants to win so badly when things don't go his way, not only physically but sometimes emotionally, he overreacts. He's taken a lot of flack from his teammates this year because of some of his outbursts.
He has, and they were publicly critical of him. Inside.
But again, I think, Al, don't you think that when you have the ability, and we've seen the 97-mile-per-hour fastball, the great slider, and the great forkball, sometimes they expect you to win 30 games, 20 games. I mean, the expectation level for Jack Morris is a very great one.
1-0 pitch, and it became fashionable early this season when a guy wins 10 that quickly. As you look at Balbone's September numbers and the month he had, it becomes fashionable to relate to the past. And in Detroit, when you talk about winning 30 games, that's where it happened the last time when Denny McLain did it in 1968.
Wonder what Chet Forty has in mind.
1-1 pitch. Swing and a miss. When you talk about streak hitters, Balboni at one point this season hit 10 homers in 14 games. At another point, he was 0 for 23 with 15 strikeouts, including 9 Ks in a row.
Hauser doesn't care about that. That's the way he's developed Balboni. He's told him to forget the strikeouts. Injuries, he only had, let me get this in quickly, 400 plus at bats. He wants to get 600 at bats out of him. Thinks he'll hit over 30 home runs a year and 100 RBIs.
Chases this one in the dirt for strike 3. We go to the 5th in game 1. Tigers 3, Royals nothing. Could play defensively in the second half of the season because of his shoulder, but he's played, and here's what he had to say.
Well, I think there's no question. I don't think my arm's been 100% since I hurt it, but I've been able to get by with it. It really is the plays that the harder plays are the easiest ones where I don't think about it. But really, I've had 3 days off, and I feel very good. I'm out here throwing today, and it feels very good.
He hasn't had a tough play defensively. Offensively, he has tripled, driven in a run, scored a run, and walked. 1 for 1. and hits a high fly ball to deep left field and down into the corner. That's got a chance. He's hit it out of here. A triple and a home run for Alan Trammell, and the Tigers lead 4-0. Trammell hit 14 during the regular season. So a homer and a triple and 2 runs scored tonight. 4-0 Tigers.
We talked about Bud Black's control. Tonight he has control in the middle of the plate. Doesn't throw hard enough to do that. Kind of a thigh-high fastball right down the middle. Trammell's too good a hitter to pitch him that way.
You just can't fall behind this Detroit team. Earl was talking about the strength of this team today. You know he's picked them to win everything, and
Gibson.
I think he's right.
Gibson bunting, and a nice play by Bud Black to get down off the mound quickly and shovel to first base. You think of Gibson, big and burly, is solely a power hitter. If you haven't seen him play, this is something he does a lot. He will bunt. He has great speed, led the team in steals, and it's a good bunt here. Simply a nice play by Black.
I'm surprised, Al, he was able to make this play. One of these plays that you practice in spring training, but not with Gibson running. He makes an excellent play, a nice scoop by Balboni.
That's what you talked about earlier, and you were on target, Jim, in the pregame show when you talked about Hernandez and Lopez, because you get behind this team, you can't emphasize it too much. You got a 7-inning ball game against them, because then in comes Willett.
Parrish, a fly ball to shallow left center, and so after 800 feet worth of outs, this one is a soft fly ball to Wilson. There's Trammell. 2 down, and Herndon coming up. Larry homered his last trip.
I think one thing we really haven't talked about is we talked about Tom Monahan buying the Tigers. We saw Jim Candle, who's the president, and helped develop them. But they had a change in philosophies. They signed Herndon. They signed Lemon. They signed Trammell to a long-term contract. They've kept a lot of their guys, and they went out on the free agent market. Got Darrell Evans. Made the great trade with Glenn Wilson and Walkenfuss for Willie Hernandez and Dave Bergman. That's helped shore up their defense in late-inning situations. They won 92 games last year, but they did not have the type of players that they have this year. They improved their ball club.
Well, they went out and did something like sign Rupert Jones, who went to spring training with Pittsburgh, sent him to Evansville to the minor leagues, and then brought him up in June.
He used to be the wildest swinger in the world. The job that Anderson, and Sparky, has done with him is unbelievable. I said we'd get to it tomorrow when Rupert will be playing.
It's a little bit premature about talking tomorrow, but when you put Rupert Jones along with Lemon and Gibson,
moved out of your picture, by the way.
You put him in left field. He used to be one of the outstanding center fielders. You have quite a defensive outfield, maybe the best in the American League. They can throw, they can run them down. And if you're pitching, that's the kind of outfield you like to have.
1 ball, 2 strikes, 2 out, and the base is empty. We're in the 5th inning.
You didn't hear what he just said. Remember the way he used to complain about the Baltimore outfield?
Please, Howard, don't. I never complained about Paul Blair, I'll tell you that.
2 balls, 2 strikes on Larry Herndon. Black took something off it, bounced easily to Concepcion, and the Tigers are done in the 5th inning. But they pad their lead on the homer by Trammell. Through 4.5 at KC, it's Detroit 4 and the Royals nothing.
Which we'll see tomorrow too. Thurman against Steve Trout. The interesting thing about this series, Jim, they talk about home field advantage. This is a series with road field advantage, which accrues in the long run to Kansas City. Detroit has yet to lose here this year, and Kansas City lost only once out of 6 times at Detroit. Interesting.
Well, Reggie Jackson touched on it today, where he thought the reason, as I said in the pregame, the Royals had an advantage because the Tigers don't play that well here.
White.
Well, they were 6-0.
White fouls it away. That's the only time since this team came into the American League in '69 that a visiting team has swept all the games in 1 year at Royal Stadium. Kansas City 5-1 in Detroit.
And I think the reason for that, Al, is that you take these Kansas City players, they're not home run threats here, but when you get them away in Detroit, they can hit some home runs.
Grounded to short. Now let's watch Trammell's arm again, and it's a high throw, but Evans is able to stay on the bag.
Fans boo, but That call was maybe questionable in their minds, but not the kind of call that created problems in the early going early this afternoon. And look at it again. Just what we talked about with Trammell about his arm.
Now is Evans on the bag or not? There is John Bible, who is the first base umpire. He was one of those brought in. Dick Butler had been familiar with his work. They brought in 3 umpires that Dick knew of, and of course Deegan back at the plate, a former American leaguer, and then 3 other umpires from the Kansas City area, comprising the 6-man crew here tonight. So 1 out and 1-0 the count on Don Slaught, and Morris just blows it by him, 1-1.
What was it Dick Howser was telling us before the game? He only hopes this game doesn't turn on one bad call because of the current strike situation. Certainly up till now, there's no reason to fear it.
Good change. Well, I tell you, throw that fastball as he did on the 1-0 pitch and blow it by, and then he throws that little split-fingered pitch. It's tough.
Well, that was actually his palm ball, Al, and Roger Craig, of course, doesn't like to throw it that much because he thinks the split-finger fastball is a better pitch. But I think after he just saw the swing that Slaught took, not too bad a pitch. He used to throw that a lot more before he came up with the split-finger fastball. And, of course, Bruce Sutter is the guy I think we know most of, who's been the most successful. What, 45 saves this year? Or
right.
44, something like
45.
that. Fantastic year.
Tied Quisenberry's record.
But Sparky made a point in talking. He praised Sutter to the skies, but he said, look, Sutter had a bad year in the last 4. The thing about Quisenberry, as he talked respectful of the opposition, is he doesn't have a bad year.
Fastball, half swing, 1 hopper. Evans backs up and overhands to Morris. And there are 2 down. Morris, who started the game by retiring 7 straight, and has now run off a string of 6 in a row. And it brings up Onyx Concepcion.
He's only had 1 difficult inning. That was in the 3rd. Bases filled. 2 out. George Brett up. Sticky moment. Brett slashed a liner, hit it right on the button to right. Gibson had some trouble with it. A year ago, Gibson might not have played that ball the way he did tonight. Backhanded it, made the catch.
Strike 1 to Concepcion.
Otherwise, no trouble.
Now, when Kirk Gibson first came up, he had so much speed, a little bit like Ron LaFleur, who used to play with the Tigers and the White Sox, that he would overrun balls. Just didn't have the ability to do that.
Grounded down to short. Alan Trammell over to first. And Morris is sailing along. 7 straight. The Royals are gone in order once more. At the end of 5, it's still Tigers 4, Royals nothing. Al Michaels, Howard Cosell, Jim Palmer at Kansas City. And Dick Howser goes to his bullpen. Bud Black had given up 4 runs in 5 innings and a lot of long outs as well. And so it's Mark Huseman, middleman, in the bullpen, though he does have 3 saves earlier in the season. He was closing some games. And he takes over here. Monday Night Football next week featuring the San Francisco 49ers, unbeaten 5-0, taking on the New York Giants at East Rutherford, 9 Eastern time.
Walsh, one of the coaches I most respect in all of football. Just a brilliant coach. Coach of the Niners. Giants coming apart at the seams against the Rams. 3 safeties in 1 quarter. How do you do that?
I don't know. You tell me.
It wasn't hard.
Garbet grounds into the hole. It's backhanded by Concepcion, but there's no play at all for Onyx, and it's an infield single as Garbet leads off here in the 6th inning by getting aboard. 4 runs and 8 hits now for the Tigers. No runs and 2 hits for Kansas City.
See George Brett just playing even with the bag on the turf. No chance to get that ball. Concepcion to his right with no play.
How do you do that, you ask? You get a couple of punts blocked.
Huh?
You get sacked. It's easy.
Sound like you're doing the halftime highlights. Lemon takes inside, ball one.
Alfalfa.
I want to get my own private screening here. One ball and no strikes. The count on Levin.
What are we going to do with it, Jim?
I've got the car keys. Grounded down to short. Could be two. And the Royals turn it. Concepcion to White to Balboni.
Love to watch Frank White on the pivot, don't you?
Excellent second baseman, Howard.
Ball ricochets.
Good sinker, bounce right to short. On the turf, a routine double play, especially when you can turn it like Concepcion and White can. Not too many better second basemen than Frank White.
And hit 17 home runs this year.
I think he even surprised himself with that kind of power.
He's averaged out at about 11, surprisingly, when in the beginning nobody thought he had that kind of occasional power.
Well, I think what this illustrates again why maybe they were 5-1 in Detroit is that he feels that he has the ability to hit home runs on the road, but here at Royal Stadium with its vastness, not as easy to do.
Darrell Evans squibs one up along the first base line, and Steve Balboni does it himself. And that's that for the Tigers here in the 6th inning. Kansas City coming up, they trail 4-0. Sitting in the 6th, here are the thoughts of his teammate, George Brett, on Willie.
I'm so proud of that, man. I think everybody in the ball club is. He overcame a lot of obstacles, and he didn't hit his .330 like he hits every year, or close to it, but he did help the team tremendously. I've never seen him play harder on a daily basis. I've never seen him as cordial to not only his teammates, but the fans and to the reporters. He was actually very pleasant to be around, and I don't mean to say that like he never was before, but sometimes I guess when you have problems inside and other outside interests, sometimes I guess you're turning off other people. But this year he didn't do that at all. He was definitely a team player and really a pleasure to play with. He's a Superman.
Nice statement,
yes,
wasn't it?
Brett on Wilson.
Nice man, and Wilson, a great human story.
Fouled away. Very sobering experience. I don't have to tell you, 81 days of confinement in Texas. After the drug conviction, he and Willie Aikens and Jerry Martin and Vida Blue, just to document it again, Blue had been released, all spending time in prison. Aikens going to Toronto on a deal, Martin going to the Mets. He was
That's
released,
just released, Martin.
Yep.
Forgive the interruption.
And Blue is going to attempt to come back as Whitaker throws Wilson out here in the bottom of the 6th inning. So Willie is gone, one away.
Incidentally, Jim,
The right fielder.
there's the scoring summary. First inning, the Whitaker single, a Trammell questionable triple. Motley might have gotten to it. Deep sacrifice fly by Parrish. Earned in home run, and then the Trammell home run. So there it was, 4-0, and there it is.
Sheridan has struck out and walked. Jack Morris has retired 8 in a row. Strike. Morris's only shutout this season was his no-hitter in his second start of the year in April against Chicago. Oh, 2.
I don't see where the umpires have been a very big story tonight. Do you, Jim?
Not at all. Much more so this afternoon. Writers said, how can an umpire have a significant part in a 13-0 game? Well, if you're Eric Schau and you throw the first pitch for a strike and the umpire calls it a ball, you're not overpowering, and you throw the next pitch belled high and Dernier hits it for a home run, it's not exactly a confidence booster. It's unbelievable, but being a former pitcher, one pitch can change the complexion of an entire game. I'm not
I'll buy that, but I think you're overstating it.
Well, I am. I'm not. I don't want to make anybody feel that the reason that the Cubs won today was because of the umpires. When you put 13 runs on the board, you've earned your victory. But it does change the tenor of the game.
1 ball, 2 strikes the count.
You may have noticed Willie Hernandez at the end of the inning went down to the bullpen. And the interesting thing about the 4 playoff teams, even discounting the 13-0 slaughter this afternoon, each team has the great short reliever. Amplify, Jim.
Well, they certainly do. We have Gossage. Great acquisition. Lee Smith, who's done a great job for the Cubs, and Quisenberry and Hernandez and Lopez. And here we see that split-fingered fastball, better known as a forkball, dipping just underneath the bat of Pat Sheridan for strike 3.
2 down. Brett, the batter, has struck out and then lined to right. Gibson making the catch with the bases loaded. He lines this one to left field, but there is Herndon to make the catch. And so the Tigers with a 4-run cushion, and Morris has now retired 10 straight. We go to the 7th. Still in game 1, it's 4-0. Detroit leading the Royals. I-70, about 8 or 9 miles east of downtown Kansas City. This park opened in 1973 with the fountains in the outfield. It's a spacious playing surface. In terms of seating capacity, though, it's one of the smaller parks. In fact, only Fenway Park in the American League is a smaller park. Kansas City holding about 40,000. But, you know, they like to use the cliche, in every town, not a bad seat in the joint. It really applies here. You are very close to the action, comfortable and clean, and a beautiful baseball facility. College football, Nebraska, Oklahoma State, or Georgia, Alabama. Check your local listings for the game you will see at 3:30 Eastern time this Saturday.
Well, once Syracuse upset Nebraska, Ben Schwartzwalder didn't have to go back, and you with him. You know that.
Exactly. Ben Schwartzwalder. Castillo. McPherson's going to make him forget Schwartzwalder after what he pulled off this week for the Orangemen. Castillo, Whitaker, and Trammell in the 7th inning. Huseman on in relief of Bud Black. Time called as they remove a banner that had been draped over the railing in left field.
You saw this beautiful ballpark a moment ago in the water fountains. Give it to Reggie, Jim. He hit a ball over the fountain. It was just the most monumental blow I've ever seen struck in this ballpark.
I don't know if we can get a view of, I mean, we can see out there in right field the bullpen area. One in 1976, Lee May, who is the organizational batting coach with the Kansas City Royals, who were playing for the Orioles along with Reggie, they hit back-to-back home runs off the back of the left field and the right field bullpens. Two of the long, it was unbelievable, off Larry Gura.
Off Larry?
There goes Castillo, striking out. Good breaking ball, 1 away.
Well, Huseman's doing what he's supposed to do. He's coming in here, and we talked about the 7th-inning game, and he's doing his job. Gets ahead of Castillo, and we have the super slow. Good slider, right where you want it, low and away, and you can see the what we call not a equally balanced swing by Castillo for strike 3. Excuse me, I was just saying that's part of pitching. You establish that fastball and then use that, and there we saw the fastball, throw that breaking ball, change speeds.
Tailing away.
Well, if the ball moves, you got a chance. Huseman's ball does do that.
No balls, 1 strike the count. Whitaker taking inside. Howard, you talked about the Tiger ownership before. New owner there, and I mentioned Av Fogelman, now a co-owner with Ewing Kaufman here in Kansas City. Silently and very consistently, this franchise has done a tremendous job. They've been in the playoffs 5 of the last 9 years. John Schuerholz, the general manager, and Joe Burke, the president. Perk Robinson helping to bring the players along, even in public relations and marketing with Dean Vogelar. These people have been here a long time, and they have been solid and very, very steady, and it's a credit to them. 5 times in 9 years they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, Hauser is the core. With his leadership, he's proof of what a manager can do. By taking a group of players, holding them together, which was remarkable. I tell you, when they left Yankee Stadium, and this was after the All-Star game, having lost 5 in a row, they went out of there so apparently hangdog, and yet they weren't at all. Of course, geography helped them. Even though they fell to 11 below 500, they were still in the pennant race because of the weakness of the division. Then how do you answer George Steinbrenner when he says, stop this nonsense, revise the rules? Kansas City would have finished 6th in our division. Your repost, if you will, Alfalfa.
Well, an earthquake would move Kansas City further east, I suppose. Driven to right field, where Sheridan has it off his glove after he had caught up with the ball. And Whitaker will wind up at second base. He was playing shallow in right field, went back,
the shortstop.
And got there, but it deflected off the edge of his glove, and so Whitaker winds up at second.
They gave him a double, and they shouldn't.
A lot of room to work with.
Yep.
Again, wearing glasses, he sometimes reflection at night, because it looked like he got to the ball, he just wasn't able to catch it. And we saw him make that great play on Parrish's ball in the first inning. He has good hands, he has good speed, just doesn't come up with that one.
Anyway, basically, Coach, the rules say
Yes,
all you got to do is win your division, and that's what Hauser and the Royals did.
I threw that line at George Brett when I spoke to him yesterday. He gave me some answer.
What did he say?
I don't know. I don't know if our producer, Chuck Howard's going to get that. I'd rather he said it, frankly.
By the way, they scored that in error on Sheridan, two-base error. Not a double for Whitaker. So he's at second, and the batter, Trammell, fouls it away, and the count is 0-2.
Of course, both Georges have had a problem before, you'll recollect.
Something to do with pine tar. 0-2 pitch. Line drive off White's glove and out into right field, and Whitaker will round third and score to make it 5-0.
What a game Trammell has had. And note, that time he went to right field.
That's a single, a triple, a home run, and a walk for him tonight.
Well, you talked about his ability to pull the ball. There he fights one off. Makes good contact, gets that line drive, and Frank White gave it a great effort. You know, when you're pitching and Frank White doesn't catch it, the ball wasn't destined to be caught. Which is interesting thing what you said about Trammell. Gage Brown did work with him, but the most important thing when you're a hitter is your opposite shoulder. And when he closed his stance, he still has the ability to keep that left shoulder in. He's quick enough, he's smarter, he's a much more mature player than when he first came up. He can pull the ball, and he can also go the other way, as we just saw.
Now Gibson at the plate with the Tigers on top 5-0.
He's a complete ball player.
Well, as we said early in the ball game, you talk about him being the most valuable player candidate until he really hurt his shoulder and didn't play. They had to bring up Doug Baker.
Chopper toward the middle, and that's out into center field for a base hit. Gibson has his second hit. That's 10 hits now for the Tigers, who are starting the playoffs as they did the regular season in like fashion, quickly out of the gate.
Just another turf hit.
I suspect the gate has been closed for Kansas City in this game.
For tonight, I wouldn't bet against you, pal. Not with Hernandez. Not the way Morris is going. Morris doesn't need any help tonight the way he's going.
Morris in 6 innings has thrown 71 pitches, only 17 of them balls. As going back to what Jim Palmer, as we look at a called strike, said earlier, he is pitching this way, living up to that enormous level of expectation expected of him.
Well, he's doing what Ray Miller, pitching coach for the Orioles, said. Throw strikes, change speeds. Of course, Ray doesn't have anybody over there, with the exception maybe of Storm Davis, that can throw 95 miles per hour. Put those three things together, you're going to be very effective, and he has been.
Count on Parrish is 1 ball and 1 strike with Trammell at second. There's Gibson.
Reggie said today in the afternoon game, I don't want to see a pitcher throw a curve when he's 2-0 on a hitter. Tell that to Boddicker, huh?
Well, he said that when Rick Sutcliffe did it. I guess 3-1 slider to walk somebody with a big lead. But I think in retrospect, if you go back and you look at the career that Rick Sutcliffe has, a guy like Mike Boddicker, a lot of pitchers pitch better when they throw that breaking ball when they're behind. Rick Sutcliffe wouldn't have been 16-1 going into today's game if he couldn't get that breaking ball over when he was behind in the count.
One ball, 1 strike to count on Parrish. For a quiet crowd right now. They've not had much to cheer about outside of the 3rd inning rally that ended when Brett lined out to Gibson. Tigers with 2 in the 1st, 1 in the 4th, 1 in the 5th, and 1 so far here in the 7th. 1-2.
Little swing and a miss on a good breaking ball, similar to the slider that Castillo struck out on.
Mark Huseman, 26-year-old. This is his first full year with Kansas City, missing outside. Huseman, one of those rare types that somehow escapes the gaze of major league scouts, or at least doesn't impress him. They don't draft him, winds up signing as a free agent, and 4 years later he's in the big leagues.
I think what he has, Al, is the ability to be a middle reliever because he doesn't have outstanding stuff. He doesn't have 3 or 4 pitches that's going to allow him to go through the batting order 2 or 3 times. But he's the type of guy that can come in for an inning or 2.
And he strikes Parrish out here. Big out in the 7th inning. 2 down, and Larry Herndon will be coming up, possibly, or they will go to the bench. Here's Herndon's 4th inning home run, and as you look at the replay, you're not going to see him get a chance to duplicate it because Anderson's going to go to the bench for Rupert Jones. But there was Herndon's shot to lead off the 4th inning.
That's one of the interesting things about Sparky as a manager. It doesn't matter what lead he has. He plays his game. He uses the roster. I believe he has a deeper affection for Herndon, based upon my years with Sparky and knowing him, than he has for any other player. It's something within it. And here he takes Herndon out, who's hit a home run, puts up Rupert Jones. He uses the entire roster, no matter how much ahead he is.
Well, he also knows, too, with that lead, he's going to have Jones go into the outfield as well, and that's going to help him
important.
defensively.
You know he's going to put him in for defensive. That's the other point Jim made earlier that was so right. You put Jones in there, who's got a better defensive outfield?
Well, I also think the rapport that he has with his players allows him to take a guy out that homered the last time, and they're not going to second guess them. They understand. I mean, Larry Herndon knows. He walked over the bench. He wants to bat, but he knows not only is Rupert Jones a better defensive player than he is, because Herndon did have 15 errors last year, even though he's been better in the field this year. He's had a great year with a bat. He's had some big hits and some very important ones.
Jones, by the way, started his career here in Kansas City, and then he was drafted by the Mariners when they came into the league in the expansion draft, and went to them and then over to the Yankees and to San Diego, and then was released. This year tried to latch on with the Pirates, was cut late in spring training, and signed with the Tiger organization. But a humbling experience for him.
That's
as he
right.
was sent to the minor leagues and then called up finally in June, and boy, was he ever happy to get back to the bigs.
The steaks don't taste as good down there, do they?
What steaks?
We're talking peanut butter and jelly and grilled cheese.
How would you know?
Hey, I started. Remember Aberdeen?
He pitched at Hagerstown last year. What are you talking about?
I didn't even get car fare to go up there. 8,900 people we draw. How true the chicken. Remember that, Al.
It's going to lead off your bio, isn't it?
I felt so good about that. I mean, I looked up and saw 8,900 people in the stands. I threw 4 home runs that night. I wanted to give them their money's worth.
2 balls and 2 strikes on Jones. 2 out and 2 on. 7th inning. Tigers on top 5-0. Jones, left foot out of that batter's box.
That's right. Typical batter trying to cheat, take advantage of the pitcher.
Oh, no.
In the air and playable for Motley as he coasts over toward the line. And that's the end of the top of the 7th. At the end of 6 1/2 at KC, Detroit leading by a score of 5. It's over for Larry Herndon in left field. We talked earlier about his going down to the minors, and yesterday he reflected back on it.
Every now and then, if a player in the middle of his career, at the height of his career, could go back down and have to start again, he might realize how wonderful it is up here and how wonderful the stakes are up here. You know, sometimes I think the stakes get too thick for all of us up here, and we stop to forget that how lucky we've been. And I think that's half of the battle, is that Rupert had to go all over again and earn a spot again.
Leading off for Kansas City,
Sparky Anderson talking about what it meant to Jones. Summing up very much the feelings of Rupert.
Well, he agrees with Jim. They don't get stakes down there.
Bottom of the 7th inning as Orta takes outside. Ball 1. 1-0 the count. Orta, Motley, and Balboni. Tigers on top 5-0. The count. Crowd trying to get the Royals stirred up. The only stirring they've done tonight in the 3rd inning, loading the bases. 2-1. In fact, the 3rd inning is the only inning in which the Royals have even had a man on base.
Well, Morris has been that overpowering. He's just on.
3-1. What really has to be distressing if you're the Kansas City Royals, you're down 5-0, and you know that even if you get a rally started, you're going to see Lopez and Hernandez getting up in the bullpen. To right center field on a line. Lemon racing back. She's off the wall and bounding back for the infield. Lemon can't play it. It's picked up by Gibson, and Orta will be held at 3rd.
So finally got around on a pitch. That's the George Orta I know.
Left fielder Gerald.
Now watch Sparky. One more hit. You'll see action in that bullpen very shortly.
I think something that shows the maturity of Kirk Gibson. Watch him back up on this play. A lot of right fielders just stand over in right field and watch Lemon. And actually, Gibson's the guy that picks it up, even though it doesn't mean much. It does keep from maybe being an inside the park home run.
Triple for Orta. The most solidly hit ball for the Royals tonight. The infield, of course, can play back with Motley at the plate. The count is 1-0.
Did you see that tight shot of Motley, Jim? Who's he remind you?
I don't know. No Neck Williams?
He looks like Walt No Neck Williams, except he's got a neck.
So then how can he look like No Neck?
Facially. Not neckily.
How do you
facially
remember Walt No Neck Williams?
How do I what?
How do you remember him? White Sox?
I remember him from he played with Steve Carlton in Winnipeg, and I remember a massive home run he hit off me over the exits in Baltimore.
Everybody had a massive home run.
Oh.
That's grounded to short. It will score a run as Trammell throws out Motley. Infield playing back. They're just looking for outs, so they concede the run to Kansas City to make it 5-1. And with 1 out, the batter is Steve Balboni. I remember watching Walt No Neck Williams when he played for Hawaii just before he was called up by the White Sox in '68. He set a Pacific Coast League record with 11 straight hits. He got word during the game he was being called up, and the 12th straight hit was a home run into a little hole in the scoreboard that was worth $1,000 from a local retailer.
You know, when I mentioned the name, I didn't think we were going to do a profile or an up-close and person. Good Lord.
Well, I've learned at your knee. 1-0 pitch is lifted in the air to left field, and in comes Jones to make the catch. So along came Jones to take care of Balboni. 2 down.
The second baseman, Frank White.
Frank White has grounded out twice.
that ball dip?
Well, that's that split-fingered ball, and I guess a lot of fans don't know what we're talking about, but it's a pitch you throw with your fingers split apart. Kind of has top spin on it instead of back spin, and the ball goes down. Hitter goes to swing at it, thinks it's a fastball, and the bottom drops out.
I don't think we mentioned Roger the Dodger Craig that much tonight. He is a great pitcher.
Well, he certainly is. He's certainly helped just about everything. There is Roger Craig. Nice man, too. I mean,
just lovely.
I had the pleasure of playing for a guy, George Bamberger. Not only was a great pitching coach, but I think guys would literally run through the wall. Just named manager of the Milwaukee Brewers. I'm sure everybody in Milwaukee is happy to see George back.
When he joined the New York Mets, Craig, in the days when Jimmy Breslin was writing "Can anybody here play this game?" Roger, he would keep the Mets, futile as they were in ball games, with his. He had the best pickoff move I've ever seen by a right-handed pitcher. You know that, Jim? Better than yours.
I didn't have a very good one, Howard. I just tried not to let him get on.
Here's the 0-2 pitch. Lined into center field for a base hit. Juggled momentarily by Lemon, but you're not going to take any risks on the base pass. So White is at first base with 2 down. And Don Slaught. 1 for 2 is the batter. Think back to the Kansas City glory years, and I guess the most glorious of all would be 1980, when they won their 4th division title in 5 years and their only pennant. Darrell Porter was the catcher that year. When you go back and think about it, Willie Aikens was the first baseman, and Freddie Patek, and along came UL Washington, the shortstop. Fly ball down the right field line, curling into foul ground, and Gibson runs out of room. So there's been quite a revampment for Kansas City as we look in super slow-mo at the pitch delivered by Morris, upon which White singles to center. Super slow motion. Great shot from right back of the plate.
That's the only way you could hit it if it came in.
I'd have to see it just like that. You're right. And it was a wiffle ball.
What did Earl say today? He said if he could have slowed the ball down that much when he hit, he might have been able to hit 260 with some home runs.
You think so?
No, but he said it. I'm just telling you what he said.
Guess who's in the bullpen as you look at
Sandy Slaught. Don Slaught's lady.
Is done, and in the Tiger bullpen, the ominous figure, ominous for Kansas City, Willie Hernandez gets up.
But you knew that. One more hit, that's it. Sparky puts it.
I think the intense look on Sandy Slaught's face kind of epitomizes the playoffs. If you don't win, you don't get to the World Series. Probably more pressure on the wives. They're already planning to spend that loser share or the winner share of the World Series. A lot more money if you get there.
What an elevator ride, too, emotionally in the playoffs. You go in with such high expectations and you feel good, and then all it takes is that one loss and you get that sour feeling in your stomach as it's grounded in the right field for a base hit. So the Royals have cut it to 4, and the runners at first and second with 2 down, and Onyx Concepcion coming up.
Now let's see what happens. I said you got a 7-inning game here. Right at the start.
This is a curious circumstance here, because you've got, very rarely would you see this, the 9th place hitter comes up, you're down by 4, you've got 2 men on. Most 9th place hitters in the league would come out for a pinch hitter, but you're dealing with the guy who has the best average in the league since the All-Star break.
370. So there's Willie, ready to come in. Sparky told me he'll never have Hernandez another year like this one. It's impossible. Hernandez told me, not impossible. I could do it again. And if he does, Sparky will be king of the hill, top of the heap.
And I'm sure Sparky at the end of next year, Sparky will say he can't have another year like that. But deep down in his heart, he hopes he can.
Strike 2.
Oh boy, he really chased.
0-2 on Concepcion.
Well, if you want to get Concepcion out, you want to throw him breaking balls. There you see that good hard slider. I mean, Morris throws his fastball up 95, 96, 97, and his slider is over 90 miles per hour. I don't think there's another pitcher in baseball that has a slider that's that quick.
That was another interesting draft. 370, 2 outs, runners in scoring position.
But in
Not
the air
this
to left
time.
field and a lazy and easy fly ball to Rupert Jones retires the side. They settle for 1 run, 3 hits, leave a couple. For the 8th, we go 5-1 Detroit. Back with more after this word from your local Royal Stadium in Kansas City. Al Michaels, James Palmer. Probably don't recognize this fella. I haven't seen him in about 5 or 6 weeks. Your name again, sir?
3 blind mice. It's fun. Fun to be with Jimmy. Remember all the bad pitches.
Scoring summary. First inning, Tigers get 2. And then Herndon hits a home run in the 4th inning. Trammell over to the 5th inning, and then Trammell drove in another run with a base hit in the 7th inning. Big night for Allen, who's driven in 3 with a single, a triple, a home run. He's also walked, fielded flawlessly. And Kansas City getting on the board on Ortiz triple and Motley's ground out in the bottom of the 7th inning. Now we go to the top of the 8th with Barbaro Garbe to lead off. Then Lemon. And then Evans.
Turned out to be a very functional player for right there.
Base hit, his second of the night.
Can play third, can play first, most acceptably. Good, consistent hitter.
Not a home run hitter, but as we see here,
That's right.
Can slap the ball, move it around. Better low ball hitter than a high ball hitter, but as you said, a functional player that has been part of the puzzle that's got them where they are. Somebody wasn't there last year. Made him a better ball club.
Chet Lemon.
People don't know this man, Chet Lemon. My book, the finest defensive center fielder in baseball, and a remarkable person. It's not for nothing, Al, that at the All-Star Luncheon this year in San Francisco.
Liner, caught by Brett for the out. Right on the money.
What a shot. You'll remember, Al, because you spoke beautifully there, and that's not a kudo. That's not meant flatteringly. Chet Lemon was selected to represent the American League All-Stars and made an absolutely compelling speech.
And you're right, people don't know that much about him as you watch him line one to Brett.
Very shy, withdrawn man.
It's the great thing about the playoffs, though, postseason, because a guy like Lemon, who's had a pretty good career with Chicago and with Detroit, has not gotten the type of exposure that would indicate to people around the country what type of a player he is. Same thing with this fellow right here, basically, too, and Darrell Evans. There goes the runner as Evans rips it in the gap to left center field for a base hit and maybe more. Cut off very deep, and Garbe, who was running on the pitch, will round third and score on a double by Evans. Second hit of the night for Evans, and that's 12 hits now for Detroit, and they lead it 6-1.
It's the fastball away that Evans goes with. Up the gap.
And Sparky puts in a pinch runner.
Dave Bergman's going to go in to run for him, and Bergman will take over at first base as
And
well.
Bergman is an absolutely brilliant fielding first baseman, and Sparky never stops with the game quite apparently in hand, using that roster.
Didn't Dave Bergman hit the big home run the first Monday night game that you did up in Detroit?
And made several spectacular plays at first base.
That was one of the great at-bats ever. Remember that night?
Fouled them off, fouled it off, almost interminably. Then got his pitch and bang, upper deck.
Well, Roy Lee Jackson, as I recall, something like 8 foul balls with a count 3-2. as Castillo swings in. But then the amazing thing was Jackson made a very good pitch. He ran it low and in on him, and he golfed it out. Did Bergman. There he is at second.
Former Yankee. Remember, he came up a game I had to win I suppose, win a Cy Young Award in 1975, the last day of the season. He played first base for the Yankees.
He also played.
There's a soft looper into right field, and that's trouble and a base hit. Bergman will round third and come in to score on the single by Castillo, and the Tigers lead it 7-1 in the 8th inning.
He also played efficiently for the Houston Astros, you'll remember, in that remarkable playoff series against Philadelphia.
That's what we call a somewhat defensive swing. He's fooled. Kind of pitch you like to make if you're a pitcher. If you get him to hit it that soft, you're going to usually be pretty effective, but not on that pitch as he loops it into right field.
Now Whitaker at the plate. One and oh.
This is only game 1 of a best-of-5 series, but there'll be no hype here. This makes tomorrow a must-win situation, no matter how you slice it for the Royals.
We talked about what manager Dick Hauser wanted to happen. He wanted his young pitchers to pitch well. Bud Blatt, for whatever reasons, didn't seem to have control or command of his pitches, wasn't able to do that. I guess the story for tomorrow, will Brett Saberhagen be able to keep his team in the game? He's done it all year, 3-1 against the Tigers, but can he do it under this pressure?
2-1, and Slot losing the ball long enough for the runner to advance as Castillo is able to take the extra 90 feet after a pitch in the dirt.
Actually, it was a good block, that backhand block, Jim.
What you try to do as a catcher is get in front of the ball, but when the ball bounces that far out in front of home plate, with a kind of spin that sometimes it's imparted by a breaking ball, you just want to try to get your glove on it, and he did do that.
Scored as a wild pitch. Still only 1 out here in the 8th inning. Tigers on top 7-1. And he hit it off his foot.
That hurts. Oh, does that hurt.
Risky run, fouling one off the pitch, breaking low and in on you.
At Alexander Hamilton High School on Robertson Avenue in Los Angeles, when Al Michaels was growing up and representing his team, he hit his ankle just that way and became a broadcaster.
How did you know that?
I never knew you played the game, Al.
Al played the game.
I'm co-authoring Howard's new book. When is your book coming out now?
It'll be out very shortly.
Okay. What is the name of your book?
I never played the game.
So obviously that never happened to you.
As a matter of fact, it did.
2-2 pitch is lined to right field, but Sheridan goes back on this one and makes the catch, and Castillo tags at second, and Marty advances to third.
They don't let up, do they, Jim?
The shortstop, Alan
2 down.
Trammell.
Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, Wrigley Field. Can the Cubs make it 2 straight? Can San Diego even the series? It's Mark Thurmond and Steve Trout.
Steve has had a lovely season, and this is what we've got tomorrow night. Now, as Frank White pointed out in the talk we had earlier and played for you, they have beaten Petrie. They've got confidence against Petrie.
Strike 1 to Trammell.
Well, if Trammell can get a double here, he hits for the cycle. Nobody has ever hit for the cycle in a league championship series game. But I was talking about Frank White. Cycle, of course, a single, double, triple, and home run. You got to have played the game
to know it, right? Castillo at third. And the 1-1 pitch. 2-1.
What'd you say, Jim?
I was just thinking, I hope maybe they get a National League umpire to volunteer to go over to Chicago tomorrow. I've been kind of impressed with the job that Bill Deegan's done.
Deegan's probably won a spot back there tomorrow. Here's your first appeal on a strike call, and they don't get it. 3-1.
And he did the right thing.
Mr. Bible was absolutely right. Look at this. He held it up.
You're wondering what the umpires are getting paid. They're getting paid exactly what the other umpires would have been paid. They're getting $10,000 for the series if it goes 5, $2,000 a game. As Trammell takes ball 4, here's the difference would be the other umpires would have gotten 10 grand 3, 4, or 5 games, and these fellas are, according to Dick Butler, getting $2,000 in an outing. As Hauser goes to the mound, Gibson is coming up. And Dick's going to go to the bullpen. So Hauser still looking for his first ever postseason win in his 7th game. Finds his team in arrears. Detroit leading by a score of 7-1. It's a story in itself that Mike Jones is even able to pitch. He was a fellow who looked as if he was going to have a tremendously promising future with the Royals after pitching very well in 1981, and then he got into a horrific car accident in the offseason that year.
Right fielder, Kirk.
They didn't know about his life at one particular point, and certainly they severely questioned whether he'd be able to play baseball again. Sat out all of 82, went through rehabilitation, worked his way back in the minors in 83, and here he is pitching in the big leagues again. Mike Jones. And he comes in with Castillo, the runner, at third, and Trammell at first base. 2 down, 8th inning, 7-1, Detroit. What a no. Jim, we were here in 81, the divisional playoffs. He lost the game, but he pitched exceptionally well against Oakland that day. And it looked like he would be maybe the ace of the staff in the near future for Kansas City. Out of play.
Yeah, not overpowering, but mixes pitches up. He's left-handed. I tell you what, a lot of teams covet left-handers. It's really nice to see a guy like Mike come back and be able to pitch. He's not having an excellent year, but I think, again, another off season. Go to spring training with renewed confidence. I don't know if he'll start on this team next year, but he can certainly be a middle reliever. Somebody comes in games 4th, 5th, 6th inning.
Shatters his bat, does Gibson, and it's a fly ball to medium deep right field. He almost broke that bat in half, but to show you Gibson's power, it's a fly ball that deep to right. In the inning, 2 more for Detroit. Another look here. In on the trademark and into the glove of Sheridan. Tigers add 2 in the 8th. It's 7-1 Detroit at the end of 7. Sparky makes some changes for the Tigers. It's Tommy Brookins who replaces Whitaker at second base. Bergman went in to run for Evans, stays in at first base. Jack Morris, they're telling us, has a blister. And that means Willie Hernandez comes in.
Exactly what we were talking about. Blister or no blister, I believe Willie would have come in. 7 innings, Jack Morris, that's all they want. Then you've got this guy. And if you want to know why it's a 7-inning game, if you're behind the Tigers, listen to this. They were 87-0. 87-0 this season in games in which they took a lead into the 9th inning.
Willie Wilson, it's a fly ball to center field. And it's Lemon waiting to make the catch. So 1 pitch and 1 away here in the 8th inning. And Lynn Jones will come up, a former Tiger. Jones, a utility outfielder for several seasons, came over to Kansas City, and Lynn, who has been platooning of late, Sheridan will hit for him here in the 8th inning. Call him the Professor. Scholarly looking Jones.
Contact hitter, goes to right field. Not much power. You can see the average over 300. And I marvel at Willie Hernandez. He's got a 90-mile-per-hour fastball. He's got a screwball that Mike Cuellar taught him.
He drives him crazy with the screwball. He's so effective against righties.
Right center field, and it's Gibson ready to flag this one down.
Then he fools them, as you know, Jim. He'll keep throwing them the screwsy, and just when they're always looking for the screwsy, he'll throw them the fastball into the inside corner.
I hate to say you're exactly right, but that's what Roger Craig said. What he has done this year is establish the inside part of the plate to right-handed hitters with his fastball. When you do that, and you have an excellent screwball, and he's down in Puerto Rico, he worked with Mike Cuellar. Mike Cuellar, as you know, had a great screwball.
He sure
Outstanding pitcher. Won a Cy Young Award. Shared it with Denny McLean. There you see the high fastball.
Pop fly, shallow center. Trammell to make the catch.
He comes in, and it doesn't take long, does it?
About a minute and 45 seconds. On to the ninth we go. Tigers 7, Royals 1. Totals through 8 innings. Tigers on top in this first game of the best-of-5 American League Championship Series at Kansas City. Lance Parrish, Rupert Jones, and Barbaro Garbe coming up for Detroit. And Lynn Jones, who pinch hit for Sheridan in the bottom of the 8th, stays in the game in right field as we go to the top of the 9th inning.
Well, so far we've brought the public 2 thrillers in one day. Combined score of 20-1.
But tomorrow is another day. Parrish. Swinging and missing. 0-1. What a beginning for the new commissioner, huh? Umpire strike and a 13-0 and 7-1 day in the league championship series.
In my opinion, the public will learn about Mr. Ueberroth in the weeks and months ahead. Showed enough in the Miracle of Los Angeles. Oh, what a performance.
No question about that. 2 balls, 1 strike. In the air to deep left field. And at the fence and leaping up, but I believe it wound up in the seats, and it did for a home run. It popped out of a fan's grasp, and it's a home run as so signaled by the left field umpire, Harold Jordan.
He was due. The 2 he hit earlier were better hit balls than that one.
Well, you don't hit 33 home runs if you're not strong. He has a way of his fly balls sometimes ending up in the seats.
I understand.
As we see right there.
So the combined score becomes 21-1.
Motley leaping. But it's 8-1 as the Tigers putting on a Cubs-like show. 3 homers tonight. And of course, as you mentioned, in some ballparks, Parrish could have had 3 tonight.
In most ballparks, he would have had 3.
And this is a pitcher's park.
Certainly in his home ballpark.
Here comes Rusty Kuntz to bat for Jones. Now, Herndon started, then we saw Jones. Now they go back to the left-hander, and it pretty much illustrates how deep Sparky's bench is.
And how he uses that roster.
And Rusty is really a far better defensive outfielder than a hitter, even though, remember earlier this season, he was, we go into Detroit, he's up around 490.
Yeah, and Sparky never lets up. Now, does this have any psychological impact for the next day? Running a team this way, Jim.
Fly ball to right field, and Jones.
I'm not really sure. I would think that the Tigers are very happy about not only what's happening on the scoreboard, but the fact they're getting to play. I mean, what he has done is allowed his guys to get some playoff experience, and let's face it, the Royals have more.
That's right. The Royals
only
came
3
into
guys.
the playoffs with more playoff experience than any other team. Brett, White, Wilson.
Oh, it's interesting. In Chicago today, Weaver was talking about, do you take Sutcliffe out of a 13-0 game or a game that's 11-0? And he said, well, if you do, you leave yourself open to second guessers. Well, what if you're one of the bullpenners of the Chicago Cubs and you get the feeling your manager's not going to take your pitcher out and rest him because he's afraid you're going to blow an 11-0 lead? What Sparky's done tonight is he's not afraid to put Kuntz out and left or Jones out and left.
Hit down the left field line and
just
foul. 1-2 the count.
I don't want to run this thing into the ground, Jim, but we covered the umpire strike at the very beginning of the telecast tonight, and It was necessary to do it because it exists, because it's a major story in sports journalism, and because of a certain number of quite apparent errors earlier today as the ground of the third is whipped over the first for the out. But on balance, now with this game approaching its end, I think these guys deserve some credit. I think they've done a good job.
Excellent job. Bill Deegan was a good umpire when he retired. I don't believe he retired for the reason that he couldn't umpire anymore. I think he did it for personal reasons, and he showed out of the game for, what, 4 or 5 years, coming back and doing an excellent job.
People forget, they think about the umpire strike in '79, which lasted well into the season. The umpires also struck back in 1970. There are those umpires again tonight, as long as we're talking about them. When they struck in '70, Deegan was one of the guys that filled in Game 1 of the championship series. Fly ball to left field, and it's caught by Motley, and then Deegan subsequently got the job as you look at the rest of what's turned out to be a very good umpiring crew tonight. In the inning, the homer by Parrish adds another for Detroit, and the Tigers lead it 8-1.
You talked about Hernandez making it look easy. Let me put you on the mound with a 90-mile-per-hour fastball, a great curveball, a great slider, and an excellent screwball.
I lost it all at Homosassa Springs when Dazzy Vance slit his sleeve in 1927.
That's why he makes it look easy. Were you a southpaw? Or are you a southpaw?
If I were, I would have stayed in the game.
You would have played the game then, huh? Willie Hernandez, and there is
Carmen Hernandez, Willie's wife.
Willie Hernandez, many years with the Cubs, and he began to blossom with Philadelphia last year. Remember, he was with the Phillies, pitched in the World Series. Did not get into the playoffs, however, because their big man was Al Holland. And then to Detroit this spring.
He's not too shabby either.
Holland, yeah.
Remember him with the Gins?
Yeah. Holland did not have a particularly good year, though, this year.
Really sorry Bob Lurie has put the club up for sale. That's easy for me to say. He took a lot of losses. Look at that.
Right.
It is too much.
Excuse me. Striking out.
But Lurie, one of the loveliest men.
Steve Balboni.
Ownership. Screwball right there.
Well, if they never figure out a way how to build a stadium there, then it might be a different story. But the city that knows how doesn't know how to build a facility is what it amounts to. Why don't you buy the club?
I've been debating it.
Well, we know Weaver's available.
He's got to stop.
What?
I love Earl Weaver.
So do I. But I mean, have you picked up a... Well, you don't read papers, but Al, have you picked up a paper?
Howard doesn't read a paper. He calls me this morning. Have you seen the Billings Gazette?
Dave McNally was highway commissioner.
It was Shelby in 1923 when Dempsey and Kearns ran out with the 100,000 silver dollars. Come on.
2-0 pitch is a strike.
Anyway, getting back to Earl Weaver, have you read a paper where he hasn't been politicking for a managerial job? I mean, you got to keep all the doors open, but all 26 clubs?
Yummy.
I know.
2-2 on Balboni. So Hernandez trying to wrap this one up with a flourish by striking the side out. He's retired 5 straight. The Tigers are a strike away from going up 1-0 in the playoffs.
He's got the perfect guy up there, 139 on the year.
And one tonight. Squibb down to first, and it will be Bergman who will end it unassisted. And Morris and Hernandez combine on a beauty. Trammell with a single, a triple, and a home run. Solo homers by Parrish and Herndon. 14 hits in all for the Tigers, and they rout Kansas City as Detroit beats the Royals 8-1 in Game 1. Statistics and graphics. Now Al Michaels for Jim Palmer. Howard Cosell saying goodnight from Kansas City. A look at the final score. Detroit 8, Kansas City 1. Be sure to be with ABC Sports tomorrow for Game 2 of the National League Championship Series between the Cubs and the San Diego Padres at 2 Eastern. And Game 2 of the American League Championship Series between the Detroit Tigers and Kansas City Royals at 8 Eastern time. Stay tuned for ABC News Nightline. Coming up tonight on Nightline with Ted Koppel, go behind the scenes of the biggest mafia crackdown in history. A massive roundup in both the United States and Italy tonight on Nightline, immediately following your late local news. Travel arrangements made through and a promotional fee paid by United Airlines. United flies more people to Hawaii than any other airline. Nobody knows Hawaii like United. This has been a presentation of ABC Sports, recognized around the world as the